Hi, welcome back to Math with Kim. We are moving on to writing fractions as percentages. All right, now I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to do this. And one of the ways I'm not really used to as much, so I wouldn't say that it's the way that I would work out a fraction and write it as a percentage, but I'm going to show it to you because it is quite practical. And again, if you do not have a calculator to use, then this is a good method. Example 2, changing fraction to decimal and then multiply by 100. Again, this isn't a good method if you're going by hand. It's just that you're going to do longhand division of fractions, which again, if you don't know how to change a fraction into a decimal, I do have a video for that showing you how to do fractions into decimals longhand, but I recommend using a calculator. It's much easier. So I'm going to show you a couple, like I said, different routes to go, as well as showing you how much more simple it is in a calculator. All right, so what I did was I set up the first one step by step to show you. So one of the first ways that we can change a fraction into a percentage is we can multiply that fraction by 100%, which again is a really basic, easy concept. Like, how do I change a fraction into a percent? Well, I just multiply it by the perfect percent, which is 100%, right? That's what we'd all like to see as our grades with not much effort involved, right? 100%. So that's what I did. I took my fraction, I multiplied it by 100%. Now notice what I did. I put that over a 1. Now again, I've stated that in other videos before. Anytime you have a whole value and you're working with a fraction, you should turn that whole value into a fraction as well. It just keeps things balanced. So you can see that the 100% is actually representing the numerator, and then really just a 1 in the denominator. It's kind of a placeholder. So what did I do? I just multiplied straight across, numerator times numerator. So 1 times 100 is, of course, 100. I kept the percentage sign. And then the denominator, 6 times 1 is 6, right? So now what you have to do, and again, this is using your mixed number skills. We have an improper fraction here, 100 over 6. We're not going to leave it like that because we are going to write it into a mixed number form. So notice what I did. And again, this you could review another video of how to change improper fractions to mixed numbers. But all I did was I divided 6 into 100, and it divides in evenly 16 times. And then there is a remainder of 4. And then I, of course, keep the denominator, which was 6. Now, I didn't leave it like this, 16 and 4/6%, because 4/6 is not simplified to the lowest terms. And again, the previous section that I did on fractions, percents, and decimals, I again reviewed how to reduce a fraction or simplify a fraction in lowest terms. So in this case, I just divided out a 2 from the numerator and the denominator. Since it's an even number over an even number, I can divide out a 2, divide out a 2. 2 divides into 4 2 times, 2 divides into 6 3 times. So my simplified reduced percentage is 16 2/3%. So 1/6 as a fraction equals 16 2/3%. And we found that by using this multiplying by 100%. So now that I've shown you it once, let's go ahead and do it again, okay? So for the second fraction, I have 2/5, right? So I'm going to first multiply that by a perfect 100%. And of course, I'm going to put that over a 1 in the denominator. All right. So if I do the multiplication of fractions, numerator times numerator, so 2 times 100 is 200, keep the percent. Denominator is 5 times 1, so that equals 5. So write that as your denominator. Now, this is definitely an improper fraction, and we need to reduce it. So 200 divided by 5, and again, if you have a calculator, it's very simple. If you need to do it by hand, 5 divides into 20 4 times, and then 0. So this would equal 40. Keep the percentage. So 40%. So 2/5 is equivalent to 40%. So if you're asked to write it as a fraction as a percentage, there are your steps, and there it is represented as a percentage. Okay? So pretty simple. Like I said, never really worked with that route before. I do my fractions to decimals to percentages. So I usually follow this second, the second rules, okay? So, and again, there's different rules that make things easy too. If I'm changing a fraction to a decimal, I can take the numerator divided by denominator and then multiply by 100. Also, there's other rules that I'm going to show you. I'm going to show it to you on this one. You could use it either one with this rule. Our definition of a decimal, again, is a number out of 100. So when I see a denominator that divides into 100 evenly, I can use this rule. I can use any of the rules or any of the steps, but this is an easy one, so I want to show you how basic it is. If I know for a fact that my denominator divides into 100 evenly, then I can simply make equivalent fractions or form a proportion, if you remember that definition. And proportions, of course, I have a video for that as well, and I would suggest reviewing it if you don't remember this step. So how would I change a 10 into a 100? What would I need to do in order to make a 10 a 100? Well, I would multiply it by 10. Right? 10 times 10 is 100. And what I do to my denominator, I have to do to my numerator. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply my numerator as well. So 10 times 10 is 100, and that's how we got that perfect 100 denominator. Why did I want 100 as a denominator? Or where did this 100 come from? I am changing a fraction to a decimal, and then I'm multiplying by 100 to do what? To get a percent. But in this case, I kind of did a little deviation. All right, I am turning it straight into a percent by making the denominator 100, because again, the definition of a percent is a number out of 100. So because I identified my denominator can go into 100 evenly, I went this route. So again, I'm kind of showing you different ways to get to percentages. So this is another way. 3 times 10 to finish the problem, of course, is going to be 30. So 30 out of 100, well, now we're done. Because any number out of 100, as the definition states, is a percentage. Okay, so that one I went a little rogue. I know that. I went rogue. I apologize. I'm going to kind of separate this one so nobody, freaks out because it's a little bit different than what the direction said. I just wanted to point out the fact that we can totally do this, and it's important that you can identify problems that you can do easier, quicker, simpler, right? Now, you may be saying to yourself, okay, well, this one up here, Kim, 2/5, 2/5. This one, 5 goes into 100. Could I do it that way like you just did this problem? Yep, absolutely. Okay. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to use a calculator to do this same type of problem, but without having to do it longhand. Okay. So here's my calculator, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and take my numerator divided by my denominator. So what am I doing? I'm changing my fraction to a decimal first. So I'm going to go ahead and get in here and take 1 divided by 6. Okay. And that is what this is showing us. Let me see if this will help. Hold on. Let me get it back into... no, you can't see it really. Oh, there we go. Good, good, good. Maybe that'll help. Okay, so what did I do? I just took 1 divided by 6. In my calculator, I took 1 divided by 6. I press enter, and look what I get. Okay. So this is a repeating decimal, and notice what it did. It rounded my last place value, because this is really 1.66666666. It'll go on forever because it's a repeating decimal. But my calculator rounded my last digit. And it's kind of like a little cheat sheet there by doing that for you, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to take that decimal, which was 0.1666, and I'm going to put a little repeating bar over that to remind you that a repeating decimal can be represented like that. Now, the problem with this repeating is we didn't get, sorry, my calculator turned, come on. All right, so what I'm going to do is after I change my fraction to a decimal is then I'm going to multiply it by 100. Because when I multiply it by 100, what does that do to my decimal? It moves it 2 places to the right. So if I multiply that, take my 1 divided by 6, enter, 0.166666666, remember, rounded, and then times 100, enter, and we get 16.66666, repeating, and that's our percentage. Now, we're not going to usually write our percentage like that. And just like our calculator rounded, we should round. So again, you need to be careful. If you get a problem like this in your homework and you get a repeating decimal, pay attention to the directions, and did they ask you to round to the nearest whole number? Okay, if you had to round to the nearest whole number, that's this 6. Look at what comes after it. There's another 6, so it rounds it up. So this could be, I'm going to write some options over here. The answer to this could be 17% if you rounded to the nearest whole number, or if they asked you to round to the 10th place, that first 6 is in the 10th place, and of course the number that comes after it is another 6. So obviously all of these are going to round up. So if you had to round to the 10th place, your answer would have been 16.6%. Sorry, my mistake. Oh, caught it. 16.7%. See how easy it is to make that mistake? And I always point that out to my students too. Be careful, because your brain sometimes grabs it, but I caught it in time. If I would have written 16.6%, would that be the correct answer rounded to the 10th place? No, 16.6 would have been wrong. I would have taken off partial credit because you made a simple mistake because you didn't round, just like me. So you got to be careful with that. So let's round one more place value. Let's round to the hundredths, or the second decimal place. So we'd look at the number that comes after it. So again, I'm going to round just this one last time. 16.6, And then now in the hundredths place, that's where my 7 would be. So again, notice what happens is every time we round out further, so if we round it to the third decimal place, it would be 16.667. If we round it to the fourth decimal place, it would be 16.6667, and so on and so forth. So be careful with where it asks you to round, and be careful with your rounding. Obviously, it's easy to make mistakes. Okay, now 2/5, we've shown one way of doing it by multiplying it by 100%, getting my answer. Another way we could have done it is I could make my denominator equal to 100 and multiply top and bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and make this equal to 100 again. I'm going to do B 3 ways. I showed you one way to find a percentage. I'm going to show you the second way to find the percentage, and then I'm going to find you the third. I'm going to show you the third way to find a percentage out of this fraction. And I'm just representing it so you know all the different routes that you could take to get your answer. There's just not one basic route. So in this case, let's say, okay, first thing that came to my head, it's on a test. Oh, I know the denominator divides into 100 evenly. So I'm going to change my denominator and I'm going to change my numerator to be a number out of 100. So if I do that, I know that 5 times 20 is how we get it to equal that 100. So 2 times 20 is going to get me a 40 in the numerator. And any number out of 100 is a percent. So 40% now. Good thing we got the same answer as when we went the other direction. No matter what, we should always get the same answer for the same problem, no matter which route you took, okay? So let's do it the second way now. So let's change our fraction to a decimal and then multiply it by 100. Okay, so let me do that on my calculator again with you. Let me get it into focus here. All right, so if I'm gonna change the fraction to a decimal, I'm gonna separate it. Fraction into decimal, I'm gonna take 2 divided by 5. Oh, I'm sorry, that is not the correct one. I'm sorry, 2 divided by 5. Oh my goodness, I keep hitting the same one. All right, one more time. 2 divided by 5. Third time, fourth time, fifth time. 2 divided by 5. Woo! Finally, hit enter. 0.4. Took a long time to get there, right? So 0.4 is what I get when I divide that in my calculator. So in other words, 2/5 equals 4/10. All right. Now that it's as a decimal, now I can use the previous work that we did on the last video of changing decimals into percentages. And all we have to do is multiply this times 100, or in other words, move our decimal 2 places to the right. So this equals 40%. Okay, so here are several different ways to get your fractions to be represented in percentage form. Now, whichever route, again, as you can see, maybe one of the ways to get there clicks better with you, then do it that way. Maybe some of you are noticing that some of these denominators make it very easy to make a percentage by finding the number out of 100. Some of you may already feel very comfortable with your calculator usage, and let's be honest, if I've got my calculator in front of me, I am always going to take the numerator divided by denominator, multiply by 100, and then of course round when appropriate, or no rounding when necessary. So this is a great lesson for you to practice, because changing fractions to percents or changing decimals to percents is something that is going to be done throughout all different types of math courses. And honestly, you know, real life math, you deal with a lot of percentages as well.